Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today in our presentation. It's an honor for me to be here, mainly for two reasons. I was a student of this university, and also this is the first time speaking in a conference. So I would like to personally thank Aryan and Dardan and the whole B-Sides team for giving me the opportunity to present here in front of you today. Today we are discussing about a very delicate subject, which is the attack which struck Maersk in 2017. This is me. I am currently working as a DevOps engineer at Buckaroo Payments. I recently joined them. It's been like 3 weeks. I'm passionate about cybersecurity, obviously, because I'm presenting here today. I'm a local ambassador for CrowdSec. They were part of B-Sides last year. They couldn't make it this year, but they are basically an open source company which offers IPS, IDS, firewall, and many integration with different software for the protection of your servers. And so I do love working with AWS. I do that daily, but as many people I don't like Azure. I want to point that out. And I also enjoy making memes, so you're going to see a couple of them during the presentation. So let's get to it. Today, we're talking about ransomware. We're going to have like a brief introduction of what ransomware is. Many of you are familiar with it, but anyway, we're going to give like a short description just to see what type of malware it is, how does it work, and so on. And we're also going to specifically talk about a very special type of ransomware, which is NotPetya, which is what attacked Maersk in this case. Also, we're going to talk about Maersk itself, just to see what type of company it is and why is it so important to mention them in this case. And then we're going to talk about the day when Maersk meets NotPetya, which was very unfortunate. And also, we're going to stop at the aftermath of the attack just to see what the casualties were and how everything unfolded. And ultimately, what's important, we're going to look at the lessons we've learned from this attack. So what is a ransomware? Kaspersky defines it as an extortion software that can lock your computer and then demand a ransom for its release. So basically what happens, a ransomware is a form of malware which basically encrypts your data and then says, I want some money in exchange of that, if you want like the key to decrypt it. And yeah, basically that's how it works. Usually the encryption algorithms that are used are unable to be decrypted without having the key. And this is why it makes almost impossible to decrypt without having the private key in this case. It also spreads rapidly on the network, which is also what happened with NotPetya, and usually the payments are required to be done in crypto because, of all the reasons we already know. It's untraceable, it's easier to make those payments, and so on and so forth. So what does it actually look like to be attacked by a ransomware? I really want to emphasize this. I really hope none of you sees this screen we're going to present next, because it's already too late for you. This is the screen that is usually presented to the persons that have been attacked by a ransomware. So basically, it gives a description of what has already happened. It says that your hard disk of your computer has been encrypted, military-grade encryption algorithm. We're going to see on the next slide how that works. It says that there is no way to restore your data without a special key, which is a private key on asymmetric encryption. And it says that to purchase your key, it usually instructs you to use a Tor browser, or as we know, the onion routing protocol. And you need a Tor browser to actually access the links that they usually provide, as you've seen. And also you need to like enter your personal decryption, and then they will send the key back. What happens most of the times is that even if the company of the person sends a payment, they will be like, yeah, you paid this, but you need to make an additional payment, and so on and so forth. So it's usually not recommended to send payments if this happens. Unfortunately, if you don't have a backup, it's non-recoverable, but if you have a backup in place, you can just simply restore that backup and have your files back. So how does it work? Basically, the victim acquires a ransomware from email, an exploit, worm, whatever type of source, and then the ransomware contacts the attacker's control and command server. So what happens is a public key is used to encrypt the data on your machine, and a private key is stored on the command and control server. So it means without that private key, it's impossible to decrypt your data. Data is encrypted, and a ransom note, which in this case is this one, is presented to the victim, and then after the ransom is paid, the attacker sends private key to decrypt the data. But please be aware that that is not always the case. Sometimes even if the payment is made, as we mentioned, probably you will not get your data back. We are going to focus on a special type, if we can call that ransomware, and I'm going to elaborate more on that shortly. It was first detected in 2017, and it was primarily spread through Medoc. Now, what is Medoc? It's an accounting software which is based in Ukraine, and the damage that NotPetya cost to companies all around the world is estimated to be around $10 billion. It's a variation of Petya, which is where the name originates. So Petya is basically a ransomware which originated before NotPetya. So this is like a variation of that ransomware, and we are going to see the differences that it has in comparison with Petya. It used two exploits, which are very popular. One of them is Eternal Blue, and it used a special tool which is called Mimikatz. We are going to see what these two do shortly. And ultimately, it was labeled as a cyber weapon, and this is for the reason because it is believed that this was created by Russian hackers, and the main reason it was created, it was to attack companies, organizations, banks, and everything that were located in Ukraine. So, unfortunately, for Maersk, it was just collateral damage because Maersk was never the target. So what happened is that the cyber weapon was created because of the geopolitical war that was happening between Russia and Ukraine. And basically, in this case, Maersk was attacked by NotPetya, but it wasn't the main target. So how does NotPetya actually go into different machines or organizations? The first variation is that it goes through the Medoc update server. So this means that NotPetya was coupled together with Medoc, and as soon as you would get an update, so in this case, it means that it used Medoc as a backdoor to actually go into the infrastructure. This is what happened with Maersk. And the other way of actually going into the systems is using phishing emails. For example, if you have like an infected document, and also, for example, if one of your machines on the local network, let's say, is infected, it can also spread through the internal network. And ultimately, this is what is called lateral movement Swiss Army knife, which means it's a compilation of tools, multiple tools, which is also what a Swiss Army knife is. And, for example, it uses, let's say, for example, Eternal Blue and Mimikatz, just like we mentioned earlier. It uses that to spread rapidly across the network, which is what happened in this case. So the most striking feature of the NotPetya ransomware is that it is not a ransomware. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I know that the name of the presentation is NotPetya ransomware, but it is not a ransomware. The developers had no intention of ever delivering a decryption key. This means that the main focus of this attack was to destroy data. And this is why it made the data non-recoverable. For example, if you take a comparison between this and, let's say, the WannaCry ransomware, which happened months before the NotPetya, the intention of WannaCry was to actually encrypt your data, get your money, get your data back. This was not the intention of NotPetya. It was purely data wiping and destruction. Let's talk about Maersk, which is the victim in this case. It has its headquarters in Copenhagen. So that is where the attack initially happened, and then it spread across the global infrastructure that Maersk has in place. It is the world's largest shipping company because it estimated that they transport around 12 million containers every year, and in 2022 they had a revenue of $81.5 billion. And the reason for this is because of the, containers prices going up and up. But yeah, basically you can just see how big of a company it is. So it has 574 offices in 130 countries. All of them were infected in this case. Even the backups that they had, even the offline backups, everything was infected when the NotPetya ransomware struck. Let's unfold the attack. It happened on June 27, 2017. At 4 o'clock in the morning, ransomware attack on Ukrainian banks, power companies, and as you can see a pattern here, Ukrainian. That's mainly because, let's say the entry point of NotPetya was MeDoc. So whoever was using MeDoc and got the update from their server, they were actually getting NotPetya into their systems together with that update. At 11:30, Ukraine Central Bank confirms attack on IT systems. Same attack with NotPetya. At 1:21, Maersk publicly confirms that the IT systems are down. At 6:12, Kaspersky says that NotPetya wiper. We have to focus on this because, as I mentioned, the main focus was to wipe and destroy data, and it has already affected around 2,000 organizations. At 7:46, Ukraine police confirms MeDoc is infected by NotPetya, but they said that it's not our fault in this case, because it was initially thought that they were actually conducting the attack, but that was not the case. They were just infected. The source of this information, it's from Charlie Pownall, which had a case study on the Maersk NotPetya attack. This is Maersk's head of IT when the NotPetya attack started. This might seem like a joke, but it is not. This is what actually happened. The way they describe it, if you were looking on the hall, all the computers was just like going black, 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 black. And there is like a strong reason for that. This is NotPetya's recipe for catastrophe, if we can call this that way. Initially, as we mentioned, MeDoc was infected, so the malware itself came from a trusted source. Nobody would think that if you just update your accounting software, in this case, Maersk was using MeDoc for tax returns in the Ukraine country. So the source, for them in this case, it was trusted. They had no idea that they could be infected from their accounting software. The second one is encrypting MFT, which is the master file table. We're also going to take a look at that. It takes less time to actually encrypt the MFT in comparison to actually encrypting all the files on the systems. We're going to stop at that on the next slide. Rapid propagation was also a feature because it is said that it only took several minutes to a couple of hours for the whole global infrastructure of Maersk to go down. They also had this fatal combination of different tools and exploits to actually achieve this, which we are going to see how they actually did that. So the backdoor. The software used by the finance teams for tax returns, as I mentioned, it was compromised by NotPetya. In this case, automatic updates were enabled, which, if you look at it, it's not something really strange because we also have automatic updates enabled in our different apps, and we would never think that the ransomware would actually originate from that. In June, the virus was pulled inside the IT infrastructure and it propagated inside the network. I'm going to get back on a slide and just elaborate on one thing. This command and control server, which we earlier mentioned, for example, the WannaCry ransomware, this connection between the machine that was attacked and the command and control server never actually happened. So the encryption key that was used by NotPetya, it was sent to an email, but that email was blocked by the machine, so it never reached the attacker's machine, which renders the files unusable. And also the operating system in this case. Encrypting MFT. I'm going to take a practical example for this. Let's say you want to go in a building and you're looking for a specific apartment. Instead of, let's say, encrypting all the names of the apartments on the doors, you simply remove the map, which is at the entrance of the building. This is what happened with MFT. Instead of going and encrypting all the files one by one, what they did is they encrypted MFT, which is the master file table inside NTFS, which is the file system used by Windows. In this case, this rendered the whole operating system unusable. What this means is that this is a table that includes information about where your files are. So this, for example, let's say for a 500 gigabytes hard disk, this is merely some megabytes. So it encrypted so fast, and this is the main reason why it was propagated so fast across the machines. To do this, they used a special tool, which is used MFT to CSV. So basically, they just encrypted the MFT master table, and the whole operating system was rendered unusable. Except that, they also had a special module integrated, which also wiped the data on the machine. So rapid propagation was done mainly using Eternal Blue, which you might have heard of. Eternal Blue is an exploit which was used by NSA. It was used for more than 6 years. They never reported it to Microsoft because they had to, they wanted to use it for their exploitations. So they used Eternal Blue, which in this case used the vulnerability of the SMBv1, which is a protocol used in Windows for file and resource sharing on the network. So Eternal Blue used that vulnerability to spread across the network. And what's very interesting is that this attack, as we mentioned, happened in June 2017. The patch for Eternal Blue was released a couple of months. I think it was March 2017. So they could have patched this, but that does not necessarily mean that this would not happen, because they still used extra tools to actually propagate through the network, which is, for example, the PS exec, also Mimikatz, and also a bunch of different tools to actually both encrypt the data and also spread across the network. This is how Mimikatz looks like. It's a tool that is used, also uses vulnerability to extract passwords from the memory on devices that are running Windows. This is an example of PS exec. We ran a command on a machine with a simple command with ipconfig, and as we can see, it returned the IP of the device that we were actually running this on. So this is just one of the tools that NotPetya had incorporated into their malware in this case, and the combination was just fatal for Maersk in this case. The aftermath of the attack. Okay, initially they had to work on pen and paper, which imagine if you have several hundred offices spread across the world. They couldn't even use their phones. They couldn't even alert their colleagues that this was happening. And that is mainly because also their servers that they used for telephone communications were rendered unusable. An estimated 49,000 laptops were destroyed. The financial cost was around 300 million. Their backups were infected. They had to shut down operations on multiple ports. They had several days of inaccessible IT infrastructure. And, it took them about 4 weeks to get like a full operational IT infrastructure. And obviously they had to rebuild all the servers and all their PCs, and it cost them a lot, both financially, and it is also important to actually emphasize that it was it damaged their reputation a lot because it's a big company spread all around the world. So basically they had some good communication, if we can say so, with their clients, partners, and stakeholders. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's not good that this happened to such a big company. This was posted on the Maersk IT systems. They publicly accepted that their IT systems were down, which is quite, unfortunate. And the lessons we all learned from this attack. It was unfortunate for Maersk to have this attack, but nowadays it serves as a lesson for all the companies, institutions, and also individuals that you always have to prepare for the unpredictable, which in this case was also the case with Maersk, because, as we mentioned, the actual ransomware came from their accounting software. First of all, companies need to prioritize their security investments, because this is crucial for a normal operation, especially since the whole management and business continuity of Maersk in this case was based on their IT infrastructure. They need to have robust backup and disaster recovery systems. Even though they had this in this case, unfortunately, it couldn't be of help for them. It's important to have a comprehensive cybersecurity plan. They did, as we mentioned, have transparent communications with their customers and also with the stakeholders and their partners, but that didn't really came to help as much. And also up-to-date configuration of the systems, which is crucial. One thing that I want to mention is that they could have used sandbox environment to test their software, because it just, even if the ransomware would go inside the systems, if you have like a sandbox environment, the virus would just spread there and not like in the whole infrastructure, which in this case happened with Maersk. And ultimately, we can close with a quote. Maersk's experience with NotPetya serves as a stark reminder of the need for robust cybersecurity measures in today's interconnected world. Thank you for joining this presentation. If any of you has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Yep, Rico. So thank you very much for the presentation. To be honest, I remember when the Eternal Blue exploits got leaked by shadow brokers. It was a really challenging time for everyone. I was just curious. I'm not sure if you were, let's say, investigated something similar, because some of the attacks actually affected Albanian institutions, and Albanian and also probably Kosovo as well, because they were not bounded by boundaries. And if I remember correctly, if you actually didn't restart the computer, the MFT would be fine. So if you shut down the computer and didn't start up, if you didn't just restart it automatically, the MFT encryption was only happening on startup. So it was like a way to actually avoid the entire problem happening, but it was too late because everything was done. So I'm not sure, did you encounter that in real life, or was just...
Yeah, good question, because I was also asking myself this very question. But the thing is, I also mentioned that except having the MFT encrypted, they included this module which actually wiped all the data. So it wasn't just the MFT. So they had like a second thing in plan, which even if they don't restore the computer, this module that was incorporated inside the NotPetya ransomware actually made it possible for all the files to be wiped out. Even if you, for example, would not restart your computer, which happened in this case because, you know, the whole file system was destroyed by the second module that NotPetya used. But what you're saying is correct, but they also had this second thing in plan, which they wanted to make this, as successful as possible in this case.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I've heard people actually talk about that, but like the samples that we had didn't have the wiper feature, so I'm not sure if it was like the wiper feature was only like specific to a region or not. But yeah, it was really interesting to actually see an example that had the wiper version, but yeah, really interesting. Thank you.
I would say you can use the MFT to CSV on your laptop and you can try it.
No, I mean the wiper code.
Yeah, the wiper
like
module.
The
We're going to have to talk
yeah.
with the Russian hackers if they can provide it for us.
Do we have more questions? Okay. Yeah.
Great presentation. Good
Thank
job.
you.
And I actually didn't look much into that because by that time if I'm not wrong, I just started school. So, I was not working. So, do we have any estimation of companies that did pay for that and how much, extra costs were done, for paying? Because as you said, and as I've heard, not only did they not have a decryptor, but also even if they sent something, it was not allowed. So do we have any estimation on how many companies did pay and how much they did?
Well, actually they weren't unable to pay at all because the red screen that I showed you, that was an example from the WannaCry ransomware. And that is like a different subject because the WannaCry ransomware operates different from NotPetya. But there is an estimation of how much damage did NotPetya cause to all the organizations. Specifically for Maersk, it was around $300 million. But they had this, let's say, cybersecurity insurance in place, which actually made it a little bit easier for Maersk to actually come back financially, if we can say. But for the other companies, it was around $10 billion because this included banking systems and different companies, especially the ones which were located in Ukraine, because that's where it all actually started.
Okay, and another thing. Since this was the WannaCry screen, do we have, aside from the Eternal Blue and the fact that it's a ransomware, do we have any correlation, any links in the code between them? So is the bug that WannaCry had, the domain bug, present here in this? I'm asking because I haven't looked at those codes. So do you know?
Actually, what is known is that they did use Eternal Blue to propagate through the infrastructure of Maersk and all the other companies that were infected in this case. Also, there are other tools and exploits. Maybe the exact number is never actually known because there were so many tools, they just wanted to make this work. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to know for sure that. But we know that they had just enough in place to make this work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you as well.
Any more questions? Yeah, we have one more question there. By the way, I do appreciate questions because it's making me walk around the venue. I had like so much food, so I'm going to burn some calories.
Hi. So right now we are learning about data security and all the different malwares, including ransomwares. So my question would be, how can we ensure that our university remains resilient in the face of evolving ransomware threats? And also, let's just say worst case scenario, we do get a ransomware threat, and how would we ensure that our backups are secure and, let's say, up to date?
Yeah, good question. First of all, in terms of being protected by the ransomware in this case, it's crucial to have cybersecurity sessions for both the staff and the university students, because this will allow them to actually identify the potential threats where ransomware could originate from. Also, it's important to have all the systems up to date because, for example, if Maersk were to update the vulnerability that was related to Eternal Blue, I'm not saying that the attack would not happen, but the impact would be less than what they did in this case. Second thing about backups, in this case, unfortunately, even though they had offline backups, it still managed to go through the infrastructure. One of the strategies would be to have these backups in multiple places and ensure that they are done in timely manner. So in this case, they even if this would have happened, they would be able to actually restore them. What's really important to know is that, for example, if you're talking about server backups, which is where they store their data or their applications, that would be the case. But it would be harder to actually back up each and every one of the laptops of the employees, which Maersk had in this case.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Any more questions? Great presentation, Endrin.